to welcome everyone to our first webinar of 2017. This is a new format for us. We're going live to where everybody can see us, call in and ask questions. So bear with us. We may have some technical difficulties today. My name is Robert Conde. I'm the Director of Investigations here at eConnect. I'm joined today by Jeremy McGowan, one of our investigators.
How you doing?
Marcus Kelly, our investigations manager.
How's everybody doing today?
And then back in the back, who could possibly mess everything up, is Dave McCormick, our Director of Marketing.
Hello.
Today we wanted to really bring a new feel to our webinar. We wanted to talk more about how to use the software to catch theft as opposed to just how to click through the software and how to run queries and aggregate those results. So in this setup we have here today, the reason we went with live is we have a POS terminal right behind us, which will allow us to recreate different events. We have our software hooked up as well, so we can run through our software. And from there, we'll be able to show you different examples of fraud and theft. So without further ado, I say we get started with our first query that we want to go over.
Hey, Bob, just a sec. I just want to chime in. For those in the go-to webinar, feel free to go ahead and type in questions, or a little bit later in the show, we're going to have our dial-in line to dial into. That'll be our hotline, so we'll put you on the air. You can ask any questions you want live.
So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first query. Our first query being 3 or more voids on a check. Now in everybody's summary view, at the very bottom you should have a query called 3 or more voids per check. And what we're really looking for is really any check that have 3 or more voids. Now this can be completely legitimate. Someone could walk up and order a whole bunch of stuff and then change their mind, or the price be too high. But we're looking for the ones that don't look legitimate. And so what we're going to do is we're going to recreate, right now using our POS terminal, one of these types of transactions so you can see it live. We'll discuss it and we'll go from there.
So for this first transaction, Jeremy's going to come up. He's going to order several food items. You're going to see Bob bring it up. And then we'll go through and discuss what we're looking for as a transaction.
All right, I'd like to get a plate of wings, Bass beer, and a shot of whiskey on the side, please.
So as you can see, Bob's going to ring it up. Everything's going to look normal on camera. And as you see with our data stream, we have the begin check. We have our buffalo wings rung up, very first item, followed by a shot of whiskey, and then the third item is going to be the Bass beer.
1665.
All right, there's 20 for you.
And as you can see, Jeremy kind of waved him off, told him to keep the cash. But as you're watching Bob live and you're seeing what he's doing, he just went to pocket with the money or maybe even his tip bucket. But now he's voiding the items off. And the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're looking for transactions like this, it's the timing.
Okay, the other thing you can look for, as you're looking at the screen, you can see the 3 items being rung up. You can see the 3 voids that took place. Now, there's a couple different ways we can go with this. The first way is I can wait for somebody else to show up and order items and continue to add to this check, and that's where the timing comes into play. The other thing I can do is I can tender this to 0, and I can go ahead and I can press pay, and I can put 20 bucks in. And you'll see that right there on the screen, my total due was at 0. My cash in was 20.
One of the things you want to remember, for any theft scheme to take place, they need to have access to the money. So by totaling out and putting $20 in as the payment, it's going to kick the drawer open, and that's going to give the cashier the potential to commit fraud or steal from the register, or even leave the drawer open and continue to work out of an open till.
So anytime that you see a cash transaction where a total due is 0, you know that that's going to be hinky at best.
Especially if you see cash in the
If
transaction.
you see cash being passed from the customer to the register attendant, and the total due is 0. Any type of cash movement with a total due of 0, that's something that's going to pop out, and you're going to really want to watch for.
And for those of you who don't have access to video, whether you're in the audit department or you just don't have cameras at your location, if you see the same employee constantly bringing up total due of 0 but putting in a cash amount, that's the time when you probably either want to go out in the field and do a live observation, or pass it on to your surveillance department where they have the cameras and they can look at the video.
And once again, if you guys have questions, we are live right now, and there's going to be a number at the bottom of your screen. You can go ahead and call in. We can take your calls and answer any questions you have on this. Keep in mind, whenever we're searching for these within eConnect, there's multiple different ways we can search for a lot of these. I can go back and I can bring up that same order, and I can cancel the transaction. We can look for void plus transaction cancel. We can look for total due equals 0. We can look for 3 or more voids per check. And so what we'll go ahead and do now is we'll actually go into the eConnect software, and we're going to go ahead and do a search for this particular check that we just did. So we'll go into our point of sale, and we can go down to voids, 3 or more per check. We can graph it out, and we can see that we have 1 of those today. We can take a look at the check, and we can see that the 3 items were rung up. And then a few seconds after they were rung up, about 20 seconds later, they were all voided off, and then it was tendered to cash. Total due of 0. So
Go ahead.
we can take a look at this, and you can see the customer. Well, you can't really see the customer in the shop, but you can see me over here ringing everything in.
Excuse me.
And it's one of those, if you notice on the check, another thing to keep in mind, when a check is voided all the way out, it's always good every now and then just to take a look at the very next check, if it's within a few seconds, just to make sure that maybe there wasn't a mistake and it wasn't rerun.
And see right there, the cash comes in. It goes straight into the tip bucket. No money ever goes to the drawer. And the reason that's important is if there's money coming in that's not making it to the cash drawer, but products going out, that's blatant theft. Now, some cashiers are a little better. They're still gonna ring it up. They may void it off. They'll hit transaction cancel, then no sale. They'll put the money in the cash drawer, but they'll have different ways of tracking their money, whether it be coins on top of the register.
Coins, paper clips, even today with the proliferation of cell phones being everywhere, people are using their notepads on their cell phones, or even the calculator part of the cell phone to keep track of everything.
Yeah, so that's like another way of looking at it is if it's a messy register, it's one of those either clean it up or go investigate why is it so messy? Why do they have notepads? Why are they constantly writing after a cash transaction? So it's just different things to pay attention to.
All right, so we're going to go ahead back to the software again.
Actually, Bob, I got a couple callers on the line. Do you mind if I patch one in?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Hello?
Stand by. Caller, you're on the air?
Hello?
All right, so remember what we said at the beginning, that we're probably going to have a few technical difficulties. This is a prime example of one. Caller, are you there? Are you online?
Stand by. That's not an error. That was... We're doing everything right. Stand by. I got another caller.
Hello?
Hi, my name is Steve Acosta with Jack Entertainment. I've logged into the eConnect web meeting, but I'm not getting anything.
Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and let Dave take that. Dave, can you take that call offline?
Yeah, stand by.
All right. He's going to take care of you, sir.
All right, folks, when you do call in, if you have a technical issue, please let Dave be aware of the technical issue. And if you have questions specifically for us or comments about the software, let Dave know that, and he'll pass it on to us, and we'll be more than happy to take your calls on the air.
Okay, so going back into our software, like we said, there's multiple ways that we can do a search for this. Another way we can look for this is total due equals 0. Everyone should have that query in their system. This query is going to return false positive sometimes, depending on what you sell at your park. If you have any admissions that are free,
VIP passes for the nightclub, maybe
free refills.
they're comping off drinks.
And so you will get false positives, but if you can narrow down the locations that have those, we can usually get rid of those. But once again, we go to total due equals 0, and we're going to see that exact same check that we just did. So whenever we, first came out and trained most everybody here, if you've attended webinars, we told everyone there's multiple ways to get to the same result. And that's why we encourage everyone to come up with your top 5. What are your top 5 queries that you run? Everybody should be different. It should be what you like. But eventually everybody will come to the same result.
The beautiful part about this software is the fact that you can get to the same end result with multiple different types of queries, multiple different types of searches. It's all about your personal preference, how you're most proficient with the software, and what gives you the best and most efficient results.
So, we ready to take a look?
Yeah, let's take a look at that video. So now what we're going to show you guys is a video clip
Clip 1, Dave.
of actual theft that took place that was found using 3 or more voids per check. This was one that our live analyst team uncovered. What you're going to see is a gentleman's going to approach. We'll have the cashier come up in just a second. He's going to order 2 chicken strips and 2 fries. And right now you can see that the cashier rang up those items. And he's going to turn around and begin to fill that order. Meanwhile, in the bottom right corner of your screen, you can see the customer getting cash out. And he's getting the cash ready to pay for his meal. In just a moment, we should see the cashier return.
You'll also notice that the customer doesn't have any idea what the transactions are supposed to look like or what the employee is supposed to be doing. So the employee doesn't really have any concern that the customer is gonna see what he's up to.
And keep in mind, just because this is like an amusement park, the same thing's going to happen at a nightclub or a bar. The customer is going to be more interested in everything that's going on around them versus what the cashier is actually doing.
Dave, can you rewind that a few seconds by chance? Whenever he comes back, which should be in just a second here, you're going to see the food get delivered. You're going to see him take the cash from the customer, and then you're going to see him go immediately to the tip bucket. We've talked to everyone about having slush funds or using tip buckets to make change. This is a prime example. He goes in there to make change. You'll see the guy lift up his right hand almost to wave off to say, don't worry about the change. And when he does that, that cash gets folded up and goes right down to the left out of camera view, presumably in his pocket. The items get all voided off, and their system is set up by default to cancel a transaction if nothing's added to it within a certain time frame. And that's why you see the transaction cancel down below. But once again, also going back to, we could look for a void plus a transaction cancel. This check would have come up in that same query. So once again, if you have questions regarding that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our second query. But you can call in. We have a phone number that'll pop up on the screen, and you can call in and ask any questions you'd like. So moving on, we're going to go to an underring. An underring is just that. You're purchasing an item that costs more, but you're bringing in an item that costs less so that I can keep the difference as a cashier.
So what's going to happen in this clip is Marcus is going to come up here, and he's going to walk up to the register, and he's going to order a creme brulee. But what you're going to see happen is that our register attendant here is actually going to ring in a cookie for a much lower price than the creme brulee. If you're taking a look here at the data, see him begin the check 648.
You wanted a creme brulee, right?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Now, on these underrings, one of the things to watch out for is also the passing of the
$6.
receipt. So he takes the $6. Now, you're going to see the way that he's able to change this order. So he's voiding out the creme brulee, which was a $5 ticket, and he rings in a 95-cent cookie for a total due of $1.05. He takes the $5. Change due is $3.95. But as far as Marcus is concerned, he just bought a $5, $6 creme brulee. So from Marcus's perspective, the transaction was completely legitimate, but Bob here just participated in a profit-sharing program without your permission.
Exactly. So I just made $4, and it's an easy way to steal. We've seen it at all of our customer sites. If you have a low dollar item or an item that's considerably lower than everything else, it could be something as simple as a beer at a bar.
Yep.
The beer is going to be $6 or $7, whereas a soda's $1.50. They may bring up the soda, serve the beer. It's really common when it comes to mixed drinks, because if you order a whiskey diet, and I could just bring up the diet, and I can keep the difference of the whiskey. It's one of the things that it's going to happen all the time, and keeping an eye out for it is easy to do.
And just because your customers are getting a receipt doesn't necessarily mean they're actually looking at the receipt. But if the customer doesn't get the receipt, then the employee that just perpetrated that piece of fraud is walking away scot-free, unless you have the ability to go back through the data with eConnect and find these incidents.
And for everybody with bars at their locations, I'm sure you've all seen where they're going to pour top shelf liquor, but charge or actually ring up the amount for a well vodka, let's say, and then profit the difference. So it's the same thing. So one of the other things to pay attention on is always check your inventory. Are you ordering more of the top shelf liquor, but your sales don't match to it? So that's something else to keep in mind when you're doing your day-to-day operations.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to log into the eConnect software and show you how you would find this particular fraud. If you look in here, there's going to be a query that's set up as total due less than $1.08. Now we understand that some locations aren't going to have dollar or menu items that cheap. Some are going to have some that are even cheaper. And if you do, this is a very simple query to make. And if you need to make a query where the total due is less than $5 or less than 50 cents, let us know. We'll help you with that. But in this case, this total due less than $1.08 will work. And if we graph that out, we're going to see that we do have one or two checks today. This one right here is going to be where we ring up the creme brulee for $5. You see the void, and then you see a cookie rung up, and then it's tendered to $5 cash.
Something important to notice with this check, some cashiers will actually ring up the correct item first, not knowing how the customer is going to pay for it. And then once they see that cash will be coming in, that's when they're going to void it off and ring in the lower price item, because they know they can take that money versus the check being paid for with the credit card.
Exactly. So if we go back and take a look at this check, whenever you do your review and you watch the transaction, the main thing to see is what is the customer served. Now in this case, since we're doing this live, I don't have a creme brulee to serve to Marcus. But if you were looking at your bar, you would see the creme brulee being served, but only seeing a cookie rung up. And it's really easy to determine the difference between a cookie and a creme brulee. Same thing with the bar scenario Marcus is talking about. If you see the bartender turn around, grab the top shelf liquor, pour it out, but they ring up the well's usually easy to spot. So it just takes a little bit of looking. And you'll see that we focus a lot on the data. The data will tell you stories. If you see time gaps, in this case there isn't a huge time gap, but if there was a bigger time gap between here and here when it's getting rung up and when it's being voided off and then rerung as something different, it'll tell you they're either trying to think about how to do it, they're trying to make the adjustment, they're trying to do the math in their head. There's a multitude of scenarios that can take place.
It's one of those with eConnect, we've kind of changed the game. Before it used to be watching video for 8 hours straight, hoping something happens. Here, we're telling you, go through the data first, find what you believe is questionable, and then go back to the video for verification to see if it's a policy procedure, if it's just a lazy cashier, or if it's truly theft.
Yeah, could you imagine how long it would take to be able to go through hours and hours worth of video and trying to manually aggregate every single 95-cent item that a cashier rung up to see if they were higher or lower than everybody else's 95-cent item totals?
Yep. So we want to make sure that we're still using the aggregate button. We're not going to cover that today. Most everyone who's attending this webinar has been to either multiple webinars or trainings with me or the team over here. And the biggest thing to remember is always the aggregation button. So let's go ahead and let's take a look. We have another clip from a customer site where we use this query of total due less than $1.08. This is at a coffee shop. Most people who buy coffee typically know what their coffee costs every single morning when they show up. So right now we can see that he's serving just a regular coffee. And once again, if you have questions, please call in. You see the cash hit the counter right there. The coffee gets served. He gives the customer $1 back, which is nice of him. And then, I don't know if you can read what's on the right, but he's going to bring up a water and a cream cheese.
And again, it goes back to, what does the video tell you? Do you see cream cheese going out? Do you see a cup of water, or did he actually serve a coffee?
And you saw all the extra cash go right into his tip jar. And so this was an easy one to find, once again, just using that query and taking a look at the video and paying attention to what's going out or what's being sold.
With queries like this, it's very easy to be able to use eConnect to search for specific menu items that are not typically sold just by themselves, like just a cream cheese being the only item on a check.
Or sprinkles.
Or sprinkles, or some sort of syrup topping, or an add shot, things like that that are typically sold in conjunction with other menu items. But then again, the caveat to that is you need to go back to the check prior to that to make sure that the guy didn't order a coffee and then come back and said, oh, I want a shot of hazelnut syrup in my coffee. And then, but if there's a significant delay between the last check and this one that only has a cream cheese or an add shot to it, that is definitely suspect and worthy of taking a look at.
Well, the other way to look at it is, let's say you uncover one of these events and you want to really dive into which one, if there's more of these. We can narrow this down to where we can just search for cream cheese. You know, who sold the most cream cheese at that revenue center? We can aggregate those results. And if this guy's using this method to steal, he can do it all day long, and he's going to sell 10 times more cream cheese than everybody else.
Absolutely. And it might not also just be the menu item that he's at, but most people have a pattern of behavior that they stick to. So the cream cheese being, 95 cents, 96 cents, whatever it might be. Also look for those price point items, because you might have 3 or 4 different items in that venue that have the same price point, and he's developed his method of theft based on the price point and not specifically based on that item.
And like Bob said, with you searching for specific items, eConnect's not only a loss prevention tool, but it could be used as a tool to praise employees. So if you told all your employees to upsell, let's say, a shot whenever a beer's ordered, you could do a search for shots to see who sold the most for the past 30 days, and then you can give them an attaboy, or maybe even give them a raise, or however you do your recognition. So there's multiple uses to eConnect.
All right, once again, the number's at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, please call in. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to our next clip, and we're going to go over transaction cancels. Now, transaction cancels are a bit interesting. In most point-of-sale systems, they can be used the correct way, and they can be used not the correct way. So the most common way you're going to see no sales, especially if you have a sit-down style restaurant, is if I go up to Marcus and he's sitting down at his table and he orders a drink, I go to the register and I ring up his drink. And then as I'm bringing you your drink, Jeremy sits down and I go get Jeremy's drink order.
Yep.
And then once I've given them both their drinks, given them time, I walk back over and say, what would you like for dinner? Marcus places his order. When I go back to the register and I start punching on the register, I've got to pick up one of my 2 open checks.
Correct.
Okay, and if I'm picking up my check and I actually pick up Jeremy's check, I can't put Marcus's dinner on Jeremy's check, so I've got to cancel out of that. That's going to come up as a transaction cancel. So anytime you see pickup check followed by transaction cancel, completely legitimate.
For the most part.
For the most
For
part.
the most part, yeah.
Excuse me. What we're looking for is anytime menu items are rung up, and then a transaction cancel follows, and the items are not rerun again.
Right.
And you see product go out, cash come across, that's what we're after. So we're going to go ahead and do a demonstration with our terminal here.
So he's going to come up and he's going to order looks like a large soda. So as you can see, Bob has already started to check.
Just a Coke, soda, whatever you got.
So Jeremy orders his soda. Bob's gonna,
Hold on a second.
let's see. You gotta, like I said, you gotta give us time. We don't work on cash registers every day. And this points out something good. If you ever see a cashier struggling on the register and you know they've been there for 90 days or longer, that should be a telltale sign to either they're having a bad day or they're trying to think of how to do the transaction to benefit them. But as the transaction goes, you see that a cookie was rung up, he actually got a soda, $1.05, and Bob kept the rest of the money.
Nope. Sorry, I was supposed to transaction cancel that. Let me run that back one more time. Sorry.
So yeah, so he's gonna go through it again, and it's one of those cashiers like Jeremy hit earlier. They tend to find their pattern, and humans we're all creatures of habit, and they stick to the habit. And once you figure out what their pattern is, you can nail it down to be specific to look for those type of transactions every single time.
And patterns might not necessarily just be on a daily basis. You might find a cashier that has a certain behavior anomaly on
Off payday weeks.
off payday weeks and things like that, where they just need to supplement their income until their next check comes in.
Or you might have a cashier that every time they break terminal XYZ, they know that it's not watched that often, and that might be the only register they take advantage of, but it's only when they're over there. So it's about the opportunity.
Yeah, and even things like knowing when their supervisor goes on break for lunchtime and they're not going to be watched right there. You know, if you know that the supervisor goes on break at 12:45 every single day, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of cream cheeses or transaction cancels that are being rung up at 12:45 to 1:15, that might be something to take a look at.
So you can see in the software, if we go back over to that, Dave, began the check, rang up a Coca-Cola, followed by a transaction cancel. Now what you would be looking for is the Coke going across and the cash coming over to the cashier. If you see those things happen, now we want to hone in on why is that employee doing that. So we're going to go ahead and go to the query transaction cancel. And like I said, everyone should have these queries in your system. If you don't, please call the investigations team or the support team. We'll be happy to log in and make sure it's working for you. So if we click on this transaction cancel, we can see we have quite a few in here. We can look at the check itself, and you can see begin check, Coca-Cola, transaction cancel.
I got a question from the chat. If no sale is disabled on a drawer, what are some other methods that they can use to pop the drawer open and get access to the cash?
Pickup loans is a really good one.
Well, pickup loan in our system, actually, what it is, it's assigned, unassigned drawer.
Correct.
When you have your cashiers, they have to assign the cash drawer to themselves, and by assigning it or unassigning it, it'll kick the cash drawer.
Also, ringing up 1 cent transactions.
Miscellaneous items.
Miscellaneous items, 1 cent transactions, especially in conjunction with an employee that keeps a stack of coins on their register drawer to make sure that their register drawer balances out with those 1 cent transactions is a really good way to pop it open.
Another one is, like we talked about earlier, just ringing up the cheapest item possible and jarring the drawer open, just keeping the drawer open, not even closing it. Because with these terminals, if you close the drawer almost from up above and from behind, it's going to look like it's closed, but the cashier is going to know that it's not closed and they can open it at any time.
Sometimes sign in and sign out will also kick the cash drawer. One of my favorite ways that I found is bartenders do it quite a bit, but most bartenders don't have something to fill up each one of these slots on the cash register. So what they can do is place a shot glass right in one of the coin holders.
Oops, sorry.
And with that shot glass on there, they can then close the drawer, and it will catch the top of this drawer so it sits just like this, and it's going to give the appearance of being closed. And now all he has to do on this camera angle is come up and touch the screen and then push the drawer open by hand. Now he has access to the cash drawer.
And as you see on this cash drawer, just like all the others, they have keys. We actually had one case where somebody was able to order the key online and unlock and open the drawer without sending any type of communication.
Yep.
So,
also, if you have your register system locked down really well, it kind of defeats the purpose of customer service. But even so, if you do have the system locked down a lot, employees can work out of an open drawer. They can wait for a legitimate transaction to actually pop the cash drawer and then just never close it. And the next 4, 5, 6, however many transactions that are happening, that's not revenue that's coming into your company. That's revenue that's going into the employee's pocket because they've never closed the drawer and they have constant access to the cash.
The biggest way to get past working out of an open drawer is by not having items add up to an even dollar amount.
Right.
You don't want a hot dog to be $2 even. Because if a hot dog's $2 even now, I don't even have to go to my cash drawer. I can work right out of my tip bucket and never ring in a transaction for hours.
Yep.
So once again, if you have questions, we are nearing the end of the webinar. Please feel free to call in. We're going to go ahead and we're going to show you guys a video clip from one of our customer sites where transaction canceled was used to commit fraud. All right, so in this transaction, it's a little hard to see, but this lady has a son who's just out of camera view with a bag of cotton candy in his hand. Dave, can you remove the number for us real quick?
Can do.
All right, she hands over money, and what we missed right there is you see the cash in her left hand that's just now coming off the top of the register. She's rung some random item up, and she's waiting for this lady to leave. So she's not doing it with the money. The money's still sitting there in case she needs to produce a receipt for her. But she is canceling out the transaction right now.
And it's one of those body language is important to watch, because as you watch this clip, you're going to see a couple things that might stick out to you, and we'll cover them at the end. But they're the telltale signs of something's going on.
Right now you can see the mother and everybody leaving. This girl moved her body in a position where we couldn't see where the money went, but we could see the corner of the drawer, so we can be certain the money isn't in the cash drawer. Or sorry, the money's still there. She's going to turn her body now to block it from camera, so we can't see where the money's going. But if you look to the right of her head, you can see the cash drawer is still closed.
And it's one of those all these different moves are the things that you're looking for when you're actually looking at the video, and because you have a suspicious transaction that you want to take a look at.
And then the one sign where you know someone's usually stealing is this right here. She's going to take a look up at you and say hello. Right there.
The guilty eyes.
And it's one of those, because some of the things you want to look for are the swivel heads, but usually when a cashier looks up at a camera, either they just made a mistake, hope nobody saw it, or there's potential fraud going on. They hope that the camera didn't see it, that nobody was watching at that time.
Body language is a really big telltale in video. You can't see it in the data, but when you find your anomaly in the data, you go back to review the video. You might not be able to understand fully what you're seeing in the video, but concentrate on their body language, because it'll tell you a lot about what the employee's doing.
All right, Dave, do we have any questions that have come in?
I think we're good. I think a lot of people are dialing into the call just to hear audio, so we'll kind of sort that out next time, but none at this time.
Sounds good. Well, we appreciate everyone attending this. You can go back and watch this on YouTube. It will be available for you to watch. If you have suggestions or specific transactions you'd like us to go over in the next webinar, please feel free to give us a call or give us an email, and we'll be happy to cover that in our next webinar.
Just one thing to add, you guys may see the software that we're using is a little more advanced, a little nicer looking. This is going to be released in about, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, Bob, is that right?
Unsure, but in the future. So, if you need an update to your system, if you are running an older version, give us a call. We'll verify which version you're running, and we'll get you on our next stable release. So, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the webinar, and we'll see you next month.
Have a good
Appreciate
one.
it.